Why we gotta be quiet? We're just
Hi, welcome back to the Trappist Transfer, an actual play podcast produced by Critical Missfits Entertainment, or CME, which is also really funny and related to our show. We'll talk about it in a minute. At any rate, using the Eclipse Phase RPG system as our mechanics, we here at the table have created a homebrewed environment and world and plotline that we're playing out with that. Present at the table, we have Mark Jondal with, Evie, Connor Crumley, Ashley and Bradley. I don't know why I paused on that real awkwardly. And hello, I'm your master of games.
My name is weird.
William Blackmore. Thanks for watching. Yeah. Today, we are kind of following up on our little two-parts setup system or setup series leading into our actual play, which should pick up here approximately a month from now. We'll talk about that date at the end of the show. But last time, in case you joined us or joining us the same time today, we went through brainstorming sessions, setting up the history leading up to the launch of our colonist ship heading out to Trappist, and we're going to have to maybe talk about what we named it again. We'll come back to it.
I don't think we named it.
Hope.
That's right, Hope.
Enduring Hope.
During Hope, and then we went
Did we, though?
Changed it to something else. Well, that was the original one, and now
okay.
Something else, I think.
Yeah.
Something that's less like fuck you.
Real dark. Because if you signed in, we found out that not only did we plan out the mission, but then shortly after, a few years after the disembarkment of the mission, whatever. Leaving on the trip, the Earth was destroyed, and now that colony ship is all that is left of humanity, heading out to start new and fresh. It may sound dark, but at the same time, it's very hopeful, I think. We get to create everything from scratch.
Yes.
And there's a lot that's going to come up, which we will get to when we actually start playing. But today, we're going to carry on with this creation of our world, but today we're going to be focusing a little bit more on our characters. We're going to spend a little bit more time fleshing out the virtual world, which is going to be a major setting for us. We're going to spend some time talking about some of the other logistical pieces related back to our character creation and some elements about how our world is a little bit different and may, frankly, evolve more towards the Eclipse Phase world, but really it depends upon the choices you make in the coming centuries. And then we will talk about some other sort of pieces as we develop them. So first off, looking through this character creation system, actually, even before this, I want to take a step back. I have taken time in the last few weeks to talk with each of you for the most part, or we've reached out, varying levels because everybody has life going on. I certainly do. We'll talk about that at another time. But even so, in this character creation process, it talks about how there are four primary archetypes of characters. Combat, a social or face character, a hacker, a scientist, and there can be overlap, right? No one has to be pure necessarily that. But from most of you that I've talked to, so far, everyone has sort of fallen into one of those categories and separately, which seems pretty interesting.
And if you know where to find us and you can afford us, you can hire the A team.
Totally sounded like I said face, right? I'm like, well, it's definitely an A team. So the question is, who's going to be BA? I don't know. You do whatever you want.
I mean,
all of us?
Everybody's going to be
Played
BA.
by Mr. T.
Are you too young for the A team?
I know what the A team is. I just never watched it.
I haven't seen it since it was actually airing.
I mean, yeah, that's probably about accurate. Nick at Night, maybe. I don't know. At any rate. Back to this. Either way, so I'm really excited to hear today a little bit about your characters. I'm not expecting everything to be perfectly polished today. We are going to go through the character creation process, but also in the time between now and when we actually play, if something comes up or you want to radically change something, let me know and we can work with that, right? We are not solidly locked into this. Plus, I also expect, since this is such an experiment for us to use science words and play around with this, and this is a new system for everybody at the table, including myself, right? Thank you, science words. I also want to open up some options down the line where maybe we can do a little bit more of an overhaul for the character down the line. If you're playing it through and the mechanics are just not the way you expected it to be. Yeah, I just want to say that you could either kill off your character, or if you are really into your concept and want to just revamp some things. In this world, I think there are ways that we could explain that away.
Absolutely.
So I'm okay with that.
Open it up.
What?
Airlock.
We haven't even started playing. We're already talking about suiciding in this
But
place.
have you not met me?
I mean,
true enough. Like,
We're
I'll-
here
I'll
for
kill-
it.
I
It's
killed-
not gonna be a
I
dark-
killed 3 characters this morning.
before my coffee.
Actually,
The character that
not.
constantly
They were all
changed
bards, though, right?
I think that's called social class.
Oh, man. Yes, I can't keep a bard alive. It's true.
I mean, you can when you're not playing the bard.
gotta
You
get that
heal the
tuba
bard, that's
armor.
great.
Yeah, I'm good at healing.
Like a bard that can heal yourself.
Other bard.
Forgot about that one.
Right?
So,
Two bar.
in that zone of things I wanted to talk about in terms of logistics first.
Yes.
So there are things called like reputation as well as factions in the traditional Eclipse phase system, right? So factions where you've got it's supposed to give you a little more flavor about your character's background, some of your particular like lead you into more motivation-based kind of things, right? Like what is your outlook on life? However, the factions that are primarily talked about in the system are based upon their world, right? And some may absolutely apply to us, but things like Barsoomian, for instance, where you wish to see Mars liberated from the Hypercorp control, not relevant in our world, right?
Yeah.
Especially since Mars is probably also wiped out, depending on either way. Humans didn't have a foothold on Mars based upon what we have as canon. But things like an anarchist, yeah, that probably holds true. So what I'm going to challenge us for now, and the rules give us this option, is to say let's hold factions off to the side. If at all, I'm going to say that there's at least one element that we all sort of have in terms of your faction is going to be crew. Right? I think that is something that we can keep, and then we will figure out what that might mean down the line. We'll put some thought into this in the next month. But at a very least, and yes, that holds true for you, like you are related back to the ship, right? Ship, crew, if you're related to ship functions, things like that. Somebody who either a piece of technology or element or person that was chosen to be part of this mission originally is designated ship faction. So ship/crew, I think both of those. So we'll talk about what that means down the line. So otherwise, for now, we're going to leave that part alone when we go through the creation process. But I do want everyone to think about what factions could be present, but also what factions could become present in the future. Right? Since we've got a multi-century journey and humanity, all that's left of humanity is going to be evolving and changing in this environment virtually versus real world or meat space, as some of us may refer to it. I'm excited about that. There's going to be a lot of change happening. So I think it might be interesting to think about what factions are around, how they might evolve, what new factions might come up, etc. down the line. So for now, we're going to leave that mostly aside, but I do want that sort of percolating in your minds. After that, there's another one where we talk about reputation. This is another one where, it allows you to sort of interact with others, and we'll kind of talk more about that later. But for now, I'm going to also have us leave that reputation alone. I think I'm going to have us, at the very least, tie back into a similar kind of thing in terms of there is a reputation based upon, like, hope of humanity, like you were the crew that was chosen. There's a lot of, when you interact with people in the virtual who might be going through legitimate trauma from destruction of a planet, shockingly, then, there is a level of you are known, you were voted upon literally by everybody on the planet. You have some level of reputation from that and recognition. And it may open doors, it may close others for you. So that is something where you will certainly have pieces, but I don't want to think about using their same system of reputations currently. But I also kind of challenge you in the same sense to think about what that might look like. They may still be some similar ones in that there may be a media structure where, you are recognized. There's maybe, again, other reputations that develop now that we have really the functioning remnants of civilization on the ship. So as opposed to just being all crew and other people go into this journey, we are now all humanity. So things will come up.
We've gone from being the first generational ship to the last generational ship.
The only generational ship.
Generational.
Hey, we could do really well on Trappist. Like, we don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I mean, here's the thing.
It's the one right now,
Yeah.
right?
We have
The
to
only
keep up
from
with
Earth.
this.
That's
Right.
fair. Yeah.
Unless, I don't know, we could always go back and recolonize, but that's a whole other set of
I
problems.
feel
Yeah, we used a lot of energy at this point. Also just as a plot angle, no. But
No, I mean,
we're
the,
turning the ship around.
not turning around, but like hundreds to millennia later
Yeah.
on Trappist, we can be like, oh, let's go recolonize. Like,
So, yeah,
soul has calmed down a little bit.
I 100% see a lot of future angles for where we can take this, especially if we like it and how this world plays out for us. And I'm also open to revamping things again as well. But I like that concept of, okay, we've made it through our journey, maybe however long it takes us in real world time, right? We've made it through our journey. We've gone to this other location. We've conquered this planet, right? Or found out that we can't. I don't know. Whatever happens, right? I imagine that this storyline is not necessarily going to end with us reaching Trappist, right? There's going to be other stuff that happens, and maybe, on the Trappist planet. We'll see how that goes. But then I love those options of, okay, cool. Like, do we want to come up with something new? Do we want to keep playing? Cool. Well, let's say now we've got this different technology and we've progressed. Like, cool, let's go back to Earth, right? Let's send a contingent back for reasons or not. Like, go reclaim what was once ours. I find that real intriguing. So, open to it for sure. But, down the line. Let's see.
Oh, right now.
Yeah, right now. So, generally speaking, what I want to start us off with is I would love to go around the table and for people to share at least the generalized concepts of what they have for what they want to do with their character. And if it's not very fleshed out, that's totally fine. If it is, hey, I've got a seed and I'm really looking to the table to help me flesh it out, that's also okay. Or you're like, I'm open to anything. Let's do whatever, right? So I want to open this up to all of us coming together as a cohesive team, because that is also what Eclipse Phase is all about, to make sure that we're well-rounded, that there's overlap, right? So you can have some redundancies, because that's kind of the key of the entire journey, actually.
How many times have I said redundancy since we sat down at this table?
Pretty
So far one, but now we've got it too. So.
Last time.
Gotcha. I lost track. It was redundant.
It was so redundant. That's where I was going with
Bonus
that.
points
can drink
if you
when
can
I
tell us
pun.
at the end of the show how many
drink
times
when-
we say redundant.
We drank when Ashley apologizes. We drank when I pun, which is going to be too often. We drank when Mark says
Better
redundant.
wire that down.
Yeah.
No, there's a
Basically, we're just going to drink.
How crazy do you want the storyline to get? Because I can stay surprisingly coherent depending on. I mean, you see my genetics? It's in the beard. So let's do this.
I mean, there was that one time, but
Ooh.
At one time
Our
in college.
person behind the scenes brought me caffeine to also help balance the depressant I have in my hand. Let's do this. All right, so
the chemistry
since we have talked and I've seen the pieces, I would like to start with you, and also because you're on my left and it's easy to go in a circle. If you're comfortable, please do me a favor and introduce yourself to the camera, and then tell us what you're comfortable with your character. At the very least, a general concept, if you have it, kind of like what archetype you might fill in terms of, the combat, social, hacker, scientist kind of level.
Yeah.
And then as deep as you want to go, but keep in mind, we're also going to be introducing it when we actually roll into actual play in about a month. So now this would be good for kind of like who are in the people who are actually watching, and then for those of us at the table to kind of like
I think I'm just
give you
going to
an
share
image.
what I gave you.
I would
Cool.
love that. Yes, please. I'm just going to keep talking until you do what I
So,
want.
to be fair, this is the first time I've drinking hard alcohol in front of y'all, I think. I'm
Nah.
That
Not
is-
you.
That
but
adorable little
I'm
sip that
feeling
you
warm.
just had.
Excuse me, I've had multiple sips.
Oh.
Regardless, I feel warm. It's good.
You've
multiple
had redundant
sips.
sips?
Give me a second, because I should have opened this already. That was part of this
It's
explanation.
spring break. Get crazy.
Yeah, it's my summer break.
So, basically, I would like to share with y'all my character's plea to be chosen to be on the ship.
Which I will make you read out again the first play. or
That's
first game,
fine.
But cool.
Armed neutrality makes it easier to detect hypocrisy. As always, this is Truth Seeker, arming you with the truth. Our civilization is at a turning point, Seekers. We are choosing to reach beyond our current limitations and start a fresh civilization in the Trappist system. Humans have proven it is in our nature to lie, to embellish, to change facts to appease guilt or add value. This harmful pattern is one I have committed my life's efforts to untangling. I've delved through archives of civilizations lost to form unbiased accounts of our world's past. I've exposed the deception of those in our society still who have not learned from our clouded history, all to keep information accessible to everyone. It is your right to form your own opinions. You've cheered me on and commended my resolve. You've cursed me and feared my impertinent examination. My rigor has been cause for disdain by some, and it is my understanding I am not well liked for my personality. But at the end of the day, you've seen that you can trust the information I presented you. Trust that you can form your own opinions and act accordingly. My fellow seekers, you have shown your support in this quest for access to unbiased truth, and I can only conclude that you agree an unbiased account of this journey is of the utmost importance for establishing the history of our new colony. I pledge, if chosen, to give our new colony an honest start in the Trappist system. So,
I imagine the virtual environment. Except we're probably more cawing occasionally, like people can make up whatever they want.
So, Truth Seeker over time has slowly lost whoever they originally were with whatever upgrades they've given themselves because they've devoted their existence to being free of bias. And so that has caused them to erase a lot of their past and a lot of anything that would, in their mind, create a bias when passing information to other people. As a result, too, they like pretty much look as neutral as you can possibly like imagine, like gray, no really like distinguishing features, no like just bald, like gender unknown, just like
Tell my wife
meeple.
I said,
You got like a very
hello.
basic
A
meeple.
meeple.
Yeah.
So are these meeple journalists
A
then?
heart full of neutrality.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, nobody really knew what they looked like until they put this message out to the world. They were kind of like, they became an icon. Hang on.
I'm going to say leave some backstory bits for the future,
Yeah.
but in terms of, I mean, at the same time, I also would love people at the table, as we do this, whether you come up with it right now off the top of your head or you process later,
Yeah.
come up with some questions for each of each other. So, like, a question that I posed to Ashleen for this was, no one is ever entirely unbiased. And
Right.
some parts of your backstory, talk about that, and we'll bring that up later. So I'm thinking about, like, what was one time or the first story that happened to them where they thought they uncovered the unbiased truth, but had been fooled or was wrong for some reason, and straight up published it, and something went wrong. And I want to hear a little bit about that kind of idea. So like that's the kind of question I'm thinking about. It's just a prompt, something that you might be curious about, or just could be something interesting for each of you to kind of flesh out about your character.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anybody has anything for you now, but we can also come back around and see how it goes.
Yeah.
But I like that.
Yeah.
So you are a face.
Oh yeah, basically I'm gonna do like
Our
the social
unlikable
thing.
face.
And I was kind of thinking that Truth Seeker is a bit of an icon, even though they're not like super liked by everybody. But like the sheer volume of information they've unearthed and sifted through to pass like on to other people has made it near impossible to not have at least heard of them, like at on some point. And yeah, like I have some personality stuff about myself, but I feel like that can kind of just get like flushed out in game. And if you guys like seriously, like Will said, have any questions, let me know.
Cool. And your name is Truth Seeker.
My name is Truth
Great.
Seeker. Yeah.
Name, profession,
Blogger,
creed.
everything. I call my my people who follow me seekers. If you guys didn't get that from my pronouncement,
You're an influencer.
I'm an influencer essentially.
Nice.
A truth influencer.
Yeah,
An Instagram influencer.
Who, like,
I keep the world on the straight and narrow.
which of course makes me real excited to flesh out those areas where you are not unbiased.
Yeah, and because Truth Seeker feels they have no unbiased, they have exposed a lot of things that maybe shouldn't have been exposed, and that's part of the reason a lot of people don't like them, because truth is truth, and it all needs to be shared regardless. That's kind of their like. So they're like true neutral if you were going to go with like that kind of cast typing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What if you were the first to publish to the world about the destruction that was impending?
Yeah, I
Like,
would have.
We got message on the ship. I mean, I want to play this out when we actually get, because we're going to sort of play out those first days, a few weeks and months after that,
completely
like
would've.
for our first episode. But like,
They have a right
the
to know.
message you sent to the ship, just initial ones, and we're like, hey, we're shutting down communication, and you're like, hold on a second. Blast. And they're just like, what? Shut down.
Yeah.
So that is actually a story I kind of want to see possibly fleshed out. That sounds cool. Done. Good job. Now everybody's freaked out.
Yeah. Well, they have a right to make their decisions. How can the government decide for us that nobody else gets to be on the ship?
Like that solid stare.
I like to believe that also probably took place entirely off camera, so people are like, what's happening? Like,
We fist bumped.
fist bump explosions.
I can say from watching the stream that that's sort of how it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we might as well just be doing like weird hand signs over here.
We are.
Camera, you don't know what I'm doing right now. Right. That's not true. Cool. So
Yeah.
let's leave that there for now. And then honestly, I think I'll let this percolate, so we'll come back around and see if
Yeah.
anybody has questions for a second round. But for now, it's off to Sir, Mr. Mark.
I do not know
How much or little you
how
want
much
to-
or how little I want to say.
At least tell us your archetype that you're aiming for.
I would say I loosely fit as the hacker, although I'm not one of the hackers who managed to get into our storage. I'm I'm something else.
I do want you to give us a little bit more, since this is still like not all the pieces, right, necessarily, certainly not the flavor that we've talked about, but a little bit more specific, because some things will come up in the character creation process, so I think like that might be apparent.
We're all familiar with the ship's AI, all of our characters anyway. Mm-hmm. I'm not the ship's AI.
This is actually, it works out fairly well. It's a game of 20 questions. We're going to figure out what you're not, and therefore know what you are.
Are you a crew member?
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, I'm totally fine with this being a 20 questions thing, and we'll see if we narrow it down.
Okay, yeah, this is great. This is good.
Okay.
It has to be a yes, 20 questions, yes or no, right?
20
Not
questions, yes or
ship,
no.
but our crew.
Tentatively crew.
Well,
I would designate
I'm
that as
crew faction.
It's crew faction.
Yeah.
Faction. Indubitably.
If you want to rewind the roll to see exactly what I said was definition of crew faction, that's up to you. But back to the tapes? No? I'm just going to look off the space field.
Bill, rolling back.
Yep. I don't have the ability.
Cambot.
No, this is too funny. Or no, it's not. I'm just going to keep writing.
The perfect amount of fun. Sorry.
Any more questions?
Any more
We're gonna leave it
questions?
at that. Not the ship's AI, crew faction.
And not one of the illegal upload hackers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a body?
Currently.
What kind of body?
Do you have a body that is tangible and could slap someone else?
I have no...
In the physical sense?
No, I have no physical presence.
Okay.
This is really fun, actually. I like making people guess about this.
Yeah, I have been known to utilize things that have corporeal form, but I don't have a body, like a meat space.
No meat
Body.
puppet.
No meat space.
That entire sentence I really liked, actually. All of that. I've been known to utilize corporeal things. No meat space. We can also end this questioning at any time if you like. It's good enough for now, but cool. We're going to have a lot of fun with this.
Yeah.
That actually answered enough. Excellent questions, by the way. Answered enough to explain some of the parts of our character creation process that you're going to go through that will be different from the others, but cool. Anything else to add for now?
For a short time before the event that destroys the Earth, there is a very large blast of information. And it goes on for like 24 hours, 48
as
hours
as it takes to
before
destroy.
it's shut off.
Yeah, I'd say that makes sense. I think like there's probably like a window where like it's not just happening for like the week lead up to. I think it's probably like the 48 hours to 24 to 48 hours, like just prior to that, this like scream that we talked about, right, of data goes out, right? Data and communication.
Humanity's last blast.
Exactly.
And
last blast.
Last blast.
Less exciting than
that's what the artist calls it anyway.
I like it. Cool.
Last blast.
So and then do we even know that Earth has shut off the transmission?
Yes, I would say
was
that
it
that
broadcasted to us?
Somebody.
We know that someone did that.
Yeah.
Pointing at this person. So at
the
very least, let us know.
So we know that.
Yeah. Well, y'all are privy, right? To at least like, because there's some level of like, back channels and stuff that is kept open, but the overall like, anybody that's like, I'm emailing my family and connected to the mesh that way is suddenly cut. Right. So, apart from black market and hackers.
Right. So we're still receiving information. The Earth is just no longer sending information.
Right. I would also imagine it would happen in
channels.
chunks. Like we have such an enmeshed system, if you will. Is that it would go off in chunks? Is that you would get some stuff that would go off immediately and then some stuff that would go off later and so on and so forth?
Absolutely. Well, we also discussed, that's the other piece too, is there's a certain level of like this entire blast, right, is picked up by the ship. And so, but it's like, it's so much data that processing that will take time. And frankly, there are other places for those resources to go currently. So it's like, it's been buffered for now.
And it also took a surprising surprisingly large amount of storage space too. But the ship decided to keep it because it was deemed as important.
Shockingly.
And
humanity.
But then something strange happens after Earth stops transmitting entirely. All the comms on the ship go down for a short period of time.
Yeah.
And you can't
could be some EMP from the flare. It could be like overwhelmed from the data. Uncertain.
And then eventually starts coming back on in patches throughout the ship until
extraterrestrial in nature.
Negative.
Okay.
Well,
that's an important question.
Aren't we all now?
R.I.P. R.I.P.
Too soon.
R.I.P. terrestrial. It still technically hasn't happened, I guess, via gameplay, but
it happened.
Yeah, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
We're psychologically.
But when is this question being asked me?
Right now.
No, but when is that?
By the time that you are
the present does not exist.
Whoa.
By the time you can contemplate the present, it is now the past.
That's right.
I'm gonna have to drink on that one. Not because anybody apologized, honey. I just need some sip of the sauce. All right, I like where this is. Again, we're gonna come back around if there's any follow-up questions for everybody. So
right, and I'm a time traveling alien who does magic.
We decided only sleight of hand, though. What was it you said?
Okay, none of that is true. None of that is true.
Oh, I'm disappointed.
I still
That's my backup character.
I still like the concept of
you always have a backup character.
Turn around. Turn around. No. Turn around.
So your backup character is David Copperfield.
Alien David Copperfield, though. So cephalopod David Copperfield.
Yes.
Are you sure that David Copperfield's not?
Hey, wouldn't it be really funny though if the squid aliens actually did just do a bunch of sleight of hand?
They got tentacles.
Seriously,
they're real big in Japan. Let's move on.
Anyway, am I done?
This is not the lowest we're going to go to.
Am I done?
Are you?
Am I done? Any more questions?
No.
Not for now. We will come back around, though. Second round.
Cool.
Let's do this.
All right. So.
And this is also the time for you to be like, so hey.
Yeah, I got you.
Cool.
I got you. So my character is really well known, but not known about. So it's.
I'm curious what that
means. So what that means is that they have had a hand or been part of, or even at times part of the research for much of the technology that we're utilizing for sleeving and like AI on the ship. But they're not a celebrity. They're not they're in the science photo of the team, but they are not like they're not the dude that sits at the table and says like,
if you're okay with this, and I'm not saying we need to name it right now if this is the case, but I want there to be some procedure, piece of technology, something along those lines that is like known as like the Smith something, right? Like your name, whatever it is, like it's like, oh, this is like the Smith procedure, or this is like the Smith like thing or formula, like something that piece is well known, but it's like no one knows who you are. So whatever that name is, or whatever that piece is, whether you still identify with that name too, is a whole other piece, right? But there's something along those lines. So like ever if you get introduced and there's somebody who's like at all in the know, be like, are you that? You're like, yeah, I don't like to talk about it.
It's like, I've done a lot of other stuff, okay?
Right. It's not even the thing that you're really proud of.
Also, like, I'm working. What are you doing?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was too busy.
Sorry, my baby.
The one baby. I'm joking.
The one baby.
That's my cybernetic baby. It's real creepy.
I just pictured the like baby's head from Toy Story that's on the like spider legs.
That's my favorite character.
Of course it is.
Let's go back to Train Spotting for that one. That'd be extra creepy. So, existential sci-fi horror.
Right? I'm into it. That's what we're doing right here, right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Live stream.
Also with this character, but that's more later. You were fine. So the character's name is known at least for the crew. So I'll share it now just because for the crew. And it's they go by Castor. There might be other nicknames later. We'll hold on to those. And
sci-fi nerd. Sorry.
And basically, So they're ageless in a way. The thing is we've had sleeving technology and cyborg technology for long enough, and some of that early stuff was clunky. They don't actually know how old they are anymore. Kind of like with your character and like forgetting the memories, like that's gone. They don't remember their original meat sack or like their parents or like any sort of configuration of that meat sack. And they've...
I want that on a t-shirt. This is my meat sack configuration.
Current meat sack configuration.
Current meat sack configuration.
I don't know. I'm still working on the 404 gender not found.
Yeah.
Yes. And you're giggling from the closet. You're the new Fisher. Well,
I want that.
I should be able to have that T-shirt by the next.
Perfect.
Next session.
I'll pay you for that.
Done. All of those, both of those.
But essentially where you'll find this character more often than not is either in the section of the ship where all the sleepers are sleeping, all the sleeves are...
Just watching them.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, maybe. There's a lot to it, but like essentially that they're a medic. I mean, that's the basic part. And most people, that's how they view them. They're like... They know stuff. They do stuff like, I don't know how this meat sack works. Like, can you help me out? Or like my cortical stack is freaking out. And I don't, like what's wrong with my brain? And
what's wrong with my
Did you
brain?
turn it off and turn it back on?
I feel like percussive maintenance is an appropriate measure for certain things. Yeah.
Sorry, that's Connor's character's name. Actually, now, maybe.
Right?
Okay.
But in general, like, there's not a lot known about this character, only that they have been around for a very long time. And they work, I would like them to work closely with the ship's AI because they are sort of like constantly refining these processes for the inhabitants. And that's sort of why they're there. And they already have had this like longevity and this sort of stability of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is they were picked because it was like, not only do you know these things, but you're fine. Like, we're not going to worry about you freaking out in space because you're new to sleeving or you're new to whatever. And they're comfortable, like, because I would imagine that the ship at times, like, you have something that you sleeve into that's cybernetic so that you can utilize its equipment, or, you sleeve into something that, connects to the ship in a certain way so that you can work it that way.
I want to say that those applications are certainly happening, but are still new, like we've talked about.
Absolutely.
Like, it's like, as you said, it's still like there's a level of, if you stay in this too long, you're going to freak out because it's not a like hominoid like kind of.
And that's the thing is like, so here's the deal is that ultimately my character was nominated. They were one of these like very few kind of like people that everybody who was around them and even some further out were like, yeah, whatever you're doing, you're not doing that. You're going to go do this thing now. And ultimately, my character doesn't have a whole lot of grounding or motivation. They just want to keep doing the work that they do. They love it. So
that's a level of motivation.
That's fair.
And it's just like a pure truth seeking in terms of the science and some bits.
Right.
So, a question I have for you and a potential arc or way we take this, and you don't have to answer right now, is you talked about you did like perhaps some of the foundational stack research. I don't remember because you experimented on yourself, right?
Right.
Most likely the case. Or and also like work on AI and things. I am tempted to say that I'll leave this entirely up to you. What relationship do you have with the ship's AI? You said you work with it closely, but you say, is there any sensible?
So that's freaking private.
Girl that drive exhaust.
Well, so
we don't talk about this.
At the moment, what I will say is that a lot of what we know about Castor is how people view them, and it is obvious that while they know a lot of stuff and can really like break things down and help people out, there's a level of like awkwardness with sort of normal people, if you will, like sort of like what we think of as standard humanity. And the main thing that people notice about their relationship with the ship's AI is that they are more human when interacting with it.
Oh, so interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so caster is more human when interacting with the robot. Robot.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. And or
Okay. Interesting.
more caster,
Yeah,
however you want to see that, you know.
Okay, I like that. So cool. I again, like we talked about some ideas that I take with this, especially since I can play with your like spotty memory
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
That could be real intriguing.
For sure. And well, yeah, so that the thing that I'm kind of looking for as not this character, but as a player, is that if anybody has like ideas of why I was nominated, like if you want to flesh out a thing, or even if like your character has
build it. What if you just came with the ship?
I was
Like,
just
I was
working
just
a late
slotted
night. I was
in?
working a late night, and I set up a cop and passed out, and then they had launched.
No, more
already.
just
Right.
like there's some people who like help build the ship that are just like inherently on.
I mean,
crew.
that's-
you know what I mean.
So that's how I was kind of leaning towards it, and why I was asking about the relationship to the ship's AI, because I kind of see you having a parental figure, whether
You know, I hadn't
in-
initially
in-
thought of that.
whether you were the sole piece, or at least you had a strong element, or maybe, I mean, and honestly, we can figure out how AIs are formed, but like there's an element of AI training where they grow up, and you were that researcher that was there to kind of like run it through the testing to see as it becomes sentient. In that
I have an
regard.
idea.
Yeah, please get it. It's all yours.
Okay, so
You can say no to any of this.
right. So what if the nomination and it only needed one came from the AI?
Yes. Done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll write it.
I would
I don't.
say that
Obviously, I don't have it, but
regardless, it's like if you're the one who knows this whole configuration best, you are the best one to be on
For sure.
to have the job. It probably
Wait,
wasn't even
can I
like
Yeah.
It probably wasn't even like a conflict.
right.
Can I ask a clarification question? Do you mean that the AI is the only one who voted for you, or do you mean that the AI put in a nomination
Put in
for
the
you?
nomination.
Yeah. So what I think of it as is that the because the AI is going to be on the mesh as much as the rest of us, right? And so the AI is going to see all the ways that humanity is bringing these people to the ship, and so the way that I envision it actually is it being a slight step up for the AI, where previously we would have never thought the AI would have done this, but the AI did its own thing where it was like, nope, we're taking this one, and this is why.
So here's my question.
Yeah.
And this is for everybody in this case. I 100% believe this is canon. This happened. But I want to say, is the AI given a vote? I mean, like, it can be nominated and do those pieces, and granted, this is something new, but I think this goes to the human population to figure out, do we want, and this is only for uplifted AIs, right? Like those that are this level sentient have that ability, not just the AI that handles the
And I feel like this is probably the only one that is at this level.
Right?
Most likely.
There may have been others in the past that were wiped out during the wars. You know, so this is like a new thing, and it was crafted intentionally, right? So the question is, and this is precedent setting, right? Not to say this will be the only one ever, or what things look like in the future, but what's how is it treated? Like it's certainly, I would say, voice is considered because it's like, well, we're putting a lot of trust in this thing, but what rights is it granted by our civilization? Like before all of this other stuff happens, right? Things might change post, but how do you think civilization, 400 million people, would handle this pre-world destruction when this thing said this person?
But do we tell them?
How about
What do you
we
mean?
Like, in the sense, like, probably the initial people that the AI will speak to are those closest to it, like scientists and stuff. Will they tell the public that that's why this person is nominated, or will those people?
I would say you say it's on the mesh. I think it connects.
Okay.
Right? Like we've given it that access to
Oh, that's fair.
by connecting
Yeah.
to our mesh, so it at least has a representative, right? Physical, virtual representative, right, in the virtual world to kind of like make a plea, right? It's avatar. So, Mark,
the answer to that question would kind of depend upon how long we've had AIs and how long they have been working for us.
I don't think it's so much on that either. It's more as in like, how much are we in virtual reality at this point? Because if you're saying that this AI has like a tangible presence in virtual reality, like it can be like whatever it wants to be or present itself however it wants to be, it's not any different than us. So I feel like most people would see that and be like, oh, like it interacts like us. It lives, especially once we're on the ship and then there's barely any people like tangibly walking around. how is it any different, right? Like, we're all downloaded consciousness. This is like, yeah, it didn't start off like the same way we did, but how is it different than a downloaded consciousness?
It only has 12 followers.
Sound irrelevant.
The air conditioning system,
I know, right?
The food processor.
No, the character did.
Yeah.
Also Jimmy. We don't know.
Jimmy, I was gonna be the
Bots following everybody.
the guy who cleans the filters.
Oh, God.
I feel like because this is the AI on a ship that is leaving, and we have like reached a point where it is world government.
And giant quotation marks, but
Yeah.
government and the
Yeah. At that point,
Wailing you 10.
sentience would be recognized as sentience and given a vote.
cool.
But like any individual, like one person, one vote. So
Yeah, absolutely. Like I would say there's in the same way that
Like-
people who split their personalities still only get one vote, right?
yeah.
Which is still frowned upon, generally speaking. But I'm okay with that if everybody is. Like in terms of I at some point, part of our like historical vignettes that we're kind of creating, I would love to have like a brief discussion on like the debate, right? Because there's gonna be factions of the 400 million that are like, again, hey, I watched a lot of movies from like the 20th century, and I know what happens when you give AI too much power. What
I think what we can learn from all of the stuff from the 20th century AI is it's what happens when you mistreat AI and don't treat it like a fucking person.
Yeah.
Not.
See, this is the debate that I want to actually have.
It has nothing to do with like not expecting them to be what they are. It has to do with treating them like
since
shit.
we're streaming this and this will go up on the Google, can we take this moment to welcome our AI overlords and say, look how we're treating you and already giving you rights in all possible ways. Please take care of us as pets. So I like this. I think
We eat food.
I want to deal with this down the line. I'm going to table it for now, but I want to deal with it down the line of like that debate because frankly, there may be factions that are still present, right? It may not be set aside, but I would say overwhelmingly, humanity sort of voted for there to be like, this is something new, let's give this a chance, right? Like it was when we created divisiveness and culture and saw these arbitrary lines based upon your genitalia and these arbitrary lines based upon color of skin and where you were born that set us apart. And so we're not starting this new leaf that, in terms of like humanity by otherizing something again. So this thing is new, sentient, we created it, let's give it.
And it may be out of necessity too. Like
it won't take no for an answer.
No. I mean the just like the awareness and perception needed to make all the computations to take the ship all the way to the Trappist system. The let's just say that with our current level of technology, that takes more than humans can do.
Yeah, which is saying a lot. You can do a lot.
That the AI was the only way to really get a grip on that in a way that you could entrust the entire ship to it with all of its with its important mission. It was just necessary for the mission, and so we had to take the chance. And we're just doing our best to hopefully have it all working as well as we can.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Yeah.
So I also like this as sort of an image for your character in terms of Truth Seeker came up to the podium and gave this impassioned plea about why they should be included on the journey.
An honest plea.
Yeah.
I believe is what it was called.
Completely unbiased. And very humble.
Very humble.
And then Castor steps up and was like, the ship nominated me. I guess I'll go.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
I was already sleeping there.
Y'all don't.
My stuff's already there.
Right.
I'm already moved in.
We're flatmates.
Yeah, so, actually, I mean,
I got the best bunk going.
so then I kind of, and maybe this is a weird ask, but I'm gonna make it anyway. I kind of want you to write what the ship said as the ship's plea for you, right? So I like that in terms of the way you created your character and being and so now this thing that is your sort of stewarded, maybe semi-parental, whether you feel that way about it or not, I'm gonna say the AI treats you parental. A little bit for whatever reasons, and maybe once you've forgotten about it, who knows? Frankly, you're a little loopy in all the ways I love, so I think that's perfect. I also really love from the scientist level, there's definitely some social overlap that I'm seeing here in terms of you were handling things from the psychological level. I mean, there's not that you knew this in advance, there's going to be a lot of trauma probably dealing with on the ship. Who knew? Sorry, as it's been broadcast,
Right.
somebody decided
I
to
also
broadcast
see
the end of the Earth real clearly.
a lot of potential trauma just in the process of like transhumanity. Like if you stack wrong, like who knows what kind of trauma can happen to your brain meats.
Yeah,
brain
I'm
meat.
just gonna leave the little seed of data corruption and what
Yeah.
that does.
Cool.
And that at this point, this is also the piece that just should be aware of.
This
You
is
talked about-
this is why it's really important to have redundant systems.
He's
Everybody
wanted to
drink.
drink.
Mark just wanted to. Mark loves having the power of making us all drink.
You do?
Technically, you should drink twice, probably just a sip instead of one sip. For redundancy sake.
Oh,
Thank you.
A little sip instead.
Oh,
of
okay,
sip.
it's only when you bring up. The other piece I wanted to bring up, right, is that definitely a lot more consciousnesses got sent out to the ship than as the lifeboat mode than is expected even.
And I might even know that before other folks know that.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
You like you're kind of like with your toe in or whatever appendage in that data stream, right? You were watching like, specifically that one, right? Not necessarily the blast of humanity, but you were watching the consciousness transfer. You're watching sort of the data rate and the processing of the virtual environment, and you're like tapping into that, right? And so that's gonna be kind of interesting and important, I would say. But like part of this is remember our transmission technology is not
Right.
great yet. So
And
it's
our
not to say that,
resources.
like every single it's kind of where I imagine it as much as we're not doing transporter tech, I'm imagining that same level of sort of mishap. Kind of like I recently I think I mentioned to Mark or somebody else recently. I watched like the first Star Trek movie, like the motion picture, right? Which God, it still holds up in a lot of ways. But
20 minutes of ship.
yeah. Well, honestly, I like that.
Is that the one where they
V'ger?
they teleport some folks and they come out like all mushy and screaming on the other end?
Yeah.
The test run.
Yeah, so good.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was referencing.
Yeah.
And that is, it's still like, hey, this is an accepted technology, so much so that we're just doing it regularly. But it's not to say that lightning strikes occasionally and bad things occur, right?
Right.
And so I just love the moment of like you saw them starting to morph, and then they get sent back down to Earth, and they're like, did they make it back? And they're like, they didn't survive. Probably a blessing from what we got back, right? Like, and you have that image of Cronenberg.
Right.
Very Cronenberg.
Oh,
Yeah.
God. So, the fly stuff. So, like, that kind of level, like, on a more consciousness level, right?
Sure.
There are going to be, from the vast stream that's sent out, most likely some irregularities, let's say. And also, just as a fun little tag for you, you've also see certain signals, consciousness signals, I'll leave that vague for now, come through that look abnormal beyond anything you've ever seen before. I'm just going to leave that as a fun little tagline for all of you to think about. So, anyway, cool. I really dig that character idea. Did you have any more questions in that vein, or I'm trying to think. Like,
No,
did we
I think
cover-
I'm good. I mean, for me, like, since I'm super new to this system, it's going to be just like slotting in all the stuff. Yeah.
I'm going to be slotting real hard the entire time.
Slot machine.
I mean,
really, like, here's the thing. Like, my strength as a GM, and hopefully this will come through, and we'll see how this goes. Like, is storytelling. Is that story based, right? And so it really is just you, and this should hold true for any role playing that you do. Tell me what you're doing or what you want to do, and I'm going to tell you whether that's feasible and how we're going to figure out statistically if that's working out for you, right? And so it's like, oh, well, okay, this particular skill is going to connect to that. Let's do this.
For sure. Yeah. I only meant in the sense that, like, in a system that I know well, like, for example, if we just cleared the table, I could roll up cyberpunk characters for you in 15 minutes because I know that system. Cool. And so it's just a matter of, like, I will tweak a character's abilities or that kind of thing to kind of fit what rolls up, and like, so that's all I meant by that.
Partially what we're going to do today, so we'll see how that goes. I think it's going to be good. Like, and again, like I said, there's going to be some level for revamp, and I'm going to give a little introduction to this process and some of the strengths that I see from this process in terms of the player character creation or character creation down the line that I think is actually quite flexible in terms of like how we can create something that is entirely you in a lot of ways. So we'll see how it goes. But I agree, it's going to be like, it's crunchy. It's the system itself is a little crunchy, but still cool and interesting, and we'll roll through it together.
Nice.
So then,
I just have something I want to tack on.
Yeah.
Something about my character and your character. So when humanity's last blast happens and the ship's AI decides to bank all that data that goes on, then something like after the shutdown, startup of the comms, you see weird bandwidth activity going on in that the place where the ship's AI stored that data. Something is happening there, and you don't know what it is, but it's a very, very complex pattern.
All right.
Sudoku.
Yeah.
Mega Sudoku.
Mega.
Three-dimensional Sudoku.
Yeah.
The game's pretentious.
11 dimensions.
It's a Sudoku across all possible multiverses.
I don't know. My mom plays this crazy
Nerds.
Sudoku that's like letters and numbers, and it's like 30 by
So I don't know if you knew this, but Sudoku is actually an addiction, and once you've finished one level of Sudoku, it's not enough, and you kind of like have to keep upping it.
Is that like that game from the Next Generation where like just relax, Wesley. Put the disc on the funnel, Wesley. Become one of us.
That game is stupid.
Actually, the last episode that I watched of Next Gen.
Like forever? You're like, no, I'm done with this episode.
No, like 2 weeks
Wesley
ago.
crushed it.
It just happened to be like, it was the game, and I was like, God, I hate this one.
Yeah.
And then I finished it and was like,
It's all right.
I'm going to watch something else now, because Wesley and the game.
Yeah.
Right.
What?
That happens to me for some Buffy episodes too. I'll be like rewatching and I'll get to one. I'm like, okay, I need to stop for a bit.
Yeah.
I hate that episode.
Here's the thing, like, it's not my favorite episode. I do really like the we're running and having to crawl through a bunch of, like, Jeffrey's Tubes episodes, though, because sometimes it's, like, a little fun, and you're like, I understand how you're not being found on the ship yet, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But that was, what's that?
Why is the ship suddenly empty?
Of 1,000 plus people or whatever was on there.
It's huge.
It's always a bad sign.
What's the name of the actress that she showed?
Ashley Judd.
Thank you, Ashley Judd. That was like the first time I ever, like, I think, I was aware of Ashley Judd. Granted, I was
That
also,
was
like,
her first
8.
appearance.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Rando.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she's cool. Anyway, shout out to Double Jeopardy. Anyway,
We just nerded out really hard there.
deep levels. Welcome to the Trappist Transfer. We're just going to talk more about other shows than ours. It's all informative. That's sci-fi. So cool. Unless there's anything more for now, we'll definitely come back around and do that second round. But what do you have?
What you got?
I don't have a lot.
Cool.
I've got a name. Her name is Penelope Gray.
Nice.
Does she identify as female? Like,
Yeah.
Cool. Interesting. Oh, I would like to investigate that in a second. Please continue. So Penelope Gray.
Penelope Gray. And so Penelope Gray is fairly well known as a fibers artist. So like weaving, knitting, crocheting, sewing, all of this shit. But it also has given her some skills as a programmer and troubleshooter of networked systems. She's like used to like these really complex interlocking patterns and can see like where if this breaks, it's going to break down here too, and can fix that.
Cool. Sounds like an intuitive coder.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
The tracks.
And also, so part of why she was chosen as crew is not only because of her coding skills, but also she has skills that are going to be useful if like we reach a planet and shit goes totally wrong. Like, what the fuck do you mean we have no clothes and we have nothing to replicate them and our nano bots are dead? Being able to like process fiber and weave it, and
I want to say
That's
that,
redundancy.
Yeah.
That's actually okay. We're giggling from the
Drink
Thank you
when
for
I was
the.
When the
trying
off-camera giggles
not to
happen.
say it.
2 sips. I like that. I also want to say, with your permission, that it is viewed as a very archaic practice.
Oh, super archaic and super like elitist that she has the time to sit down and learn all of these things that are like useless.
So many machines to do this for us.
Yeah.
That is just.
Why does it take you 6 weeks to make something?
And that could be a faction. No pumpkin spice in space.
Hey, everybody, apple cider is a far superior fall beverage.
Yeah, no. It also can be in space.
Same thing.
Apple cider in space.
Then as pumpkin spice?
And none of that bubblegum scented bathroom cleaner either.
All right.
I hate that stuff.
Really random.
Tell me how you really feel.
I don't want that in space.
Okay.
Get that shit out of my space.
Sure, it's canon.
Canon.
All right, unless we
the
want
ship, though. Sorry. So.
Unless we want Mark to officially flip the table.
Bubblegum hand soap.
No bubblegum.
No bubblegum hand soap. Anyway, again, bird walking. So what are we talking about? So elitist to check.
Yeah, like comes from a very like long-lived, well-known family. Like they pass shit down. They don't share with anybody else. It's definitely like we're the gray.
We are the gray.
Yeah,
also really intriguing.
Really.
I like it already. I
new
like it so much already.
So
Me
much.
too.
I dig that. So tell me more about your choice to have a in a very like generally speaking non-gendered world have a like gendered character. And here's the thing, like there's nothing to say that like that is impossible, right? And like we are far from moving past that, so which is why I like the conversation. I imagine where you're going with it, but like absolutely wasn't canon that isn't a thing. It's just mostly people have viewed and kind of transitioned, but I'm really curious about your thought process on it.
And again, it goes back to anachronism and like this very long-lived family, like really dealing with the past. Like, oh, I'm learning all these things. Like the whole family stays very gendered, and they've adapted enough to where they're not going to be bigoted towards anybody else, but. Yeah,
we try to avoid bigotry in this world. But.
Right.
Maybe a little elitist, but
I make all my own clothes.
I don't want to put in a box.
But it's not.
You don't have to be elitist just because you're doing
elitist?
things that are elitist. You don't have to necessarily
all of the crew has like this fine synthetic material, like jumpsuits, and then Penelope just has this like knit sweater. There's like, is that crochet?
No, you dress Victorian
fine fucking silk.
Right.
Obviously.
I don't know that we can bring this loom on the ship.
I'm worried more about the silkworms.
I'm out of this.
Ooh, nano weaving.
But see, how do you make a network out of?
Hey.
Well, but what I was actually thinking is if we're looking at potentially having basic and then potentially updated nanobot tech, like you can totally utilize it to make like artistic.
Yeah.
Physical stuff too.
Would you please raise silkworms while you're at it?
Nano silkworms.
Absolutely not.
Okay, no.
That is a strain on resources that Penelope is very aware is not going to be okay. Like we have nanobots that can produce this fiber. So
you're also an environmentalist.
But do you have?
They're genetically engineered silkworms. Okay, I'm at it. I'm letting it go.
You don't need to feed them.
Sorry, I really like this.
Maybe you can like have like stuff so you can make silkworms when we get to wherever we're going.
We have silkworm eggs.
Hold on. That is 100% a thing in terms of we absolutely have like frozen embryos and whatnot
seeds
for
and,
seeds and embryos.
I think we should be just like
genetic libraries.
We have now.
I'm just saying you put that in your person.
We've got a gene library ready to be 3D printed chicken.
Yeah,
when we need it.
We got to be able to like stride across the plains of Trappist in our flowing silk robes.
Yeah.
Hope there's plenty.
You still want silkworm? Anyway, lovely. So I like that as a lot of possibilities for sure.
But like, you can get the goats that are living in the ship to produce silk in their milk.
Oh, even better. But is that anachronistic enough for you?
Goat silk?
Yeah,
I mean,
silk.
at this point in the future, yeah, it's fucking anachronistic.
Okay, I'm with you.
so-
I'm with you. Goat
Yeah.
silk is awesome.
My question, right? It's real weird. You get cheese and then silk, depending on
What?
Or both.
from the dragon titties.
No, no.
It's really chewy, but it's
Oh.
good. It's like a Rice
The clothing?
Krispie. It's like a Rice Krispie square. No, the cheese that you'd make. Sorry.
I can't
I'm
talk about
broken.
this.
We got a lot of cheese people. at the
This is
table.
not where this was supposed to go.
Nobody's going to talk
I'm
about
sorry.
Okay,
It's my
but-
fault. I totally derailed.
Hunter.
Right?
I feel like dragon cheese is like the epitome of
my
artisanal cheese. Can you imagine the fat content on that?
Free range.
Ooh.
It's very
free
rich.
range dragon cheese.
Dragons don't
very
have
rich.
memory.
How do you
Today's
get
dragons
free
are
range?
Not yet.
Are you going to invent
Genetic
dragons just
technology
to
is
create
fine.
cheese?
So
You don't know my life.
So we're mashing up silkworm, goat, dragon. Doing this with the genetics. That's how science works, right? Science
Yeah.
mash the genes together.
No. This is it's science-y.
This is the 0.1% soft science of dragon cheese. Don't ask questions.
Yeah.
I like that this is how we're going to use it. Like we have 1% soft science that we can utilize in this campaign, and we're going to utilize it for dragons and dragon cheese.
I want you to pour me more alcohol. Not.
Oh, okay.
Look, whoa. I mean, I love you, but
No,
give
you
me
got
more of this
you got to be
delicious
more
apple.
clear, man.
I mean,
Crystal.
when I said we're in this, that was kind of my bad.
I didn't. I missed the somatic element of your spell. Sorry.
No.
Oh my god, I just cast a
No.
spell. Honestly, that's what language is. Is cast a spell.
Right?
Put more in there and
Yeah.
manifest more alcohol. We should talk about that later. Anyway, I'm like in on that. Cool. So I question for you then. So with this sort of like
I'm good.
nod towards the past, this semi-elitist elements to it that we've talked about, and not crazy high, right? But some level of this like legacy, and this like view on yourself and your past. Does Penelope, or does Penelope's family retain any level of how about this historical attachment to like being a real human? Something more, like, not to say you have to be purist in that case, but I'm curious if there's anything like maybe you've got a stack and that's still a piece, right? That's still the case. Like, I don't want any of us to be like, non-stackers.
Yeah.
What do we call them?
There's actually a word
We'll
I'm
work on
spacing
that.
on right now. There's actually a word, but I'll get back to that in a minute.
Mormon?
The unstacked.
Non-stacked. But
Shots fired.
But right, like any level of like you
Yeah.
are more hesitant for any level of augmentation. Not zero, right? But more like that level of purity. And you can be like, nah, it's fine, I'm progressive. That's cool too. But I'm curious, since you've already brought that up in terms of elements of the past.
Are you a purist?
No, because there's actually this really ornate arm that has been passed down through generations that holds family history.
Oh, that's right. That thing. That's for sure. So one, talk about more about that in a second. But two, I'm just imagining this really weird flashback moment. Be like, this is the arm that Grandpa used. And he's like, we bleach in between generations. It's fine.
God.
Too soon?
Right. Well, I mean,
could
Grandpa's
still
probably
smell
wasn't
the
the only
sadness.
one.
Well, I mean,
Oh, man.
at this point, like,
And lube.
lifespans are pretty epically long. So, like, it might be like Penelope's great grandmother's arm.
Well, we're not that far in the future from where we are now, so it can't have been that long that everyone's like lived for a long
Right.
time.
Yeah,
I mean-
it's well aware that things are standing up. But yeah, nobody's lived for like 300 years yet. But there's
Yeah.
definitely
Right.
like this tech is question mark 100 years old, something along those lines. Like we haven't weighed that explicitly. So
Yeah.
some may not remember all their ages if
Right.
things are wiped out. But like we're looking at the first, certainly like several of you may be this, or other people may be like the first generation of people who are just living past the oldest human lifespan. I would say there's
Yeah.
a few people there that are just like that first wave is like, oh man, haha, the oldest person on Earth used to be 125. I'm now 135, right? Like we're kind of just at that zone, but no
Yeah.
one is a millennia yet, right?
But this is also like something that, because it's a family heirloom, like this is something that Penelope will pass down that line.
I also feel like
I'll pass
potentially.
this arm off to my daughter.
Hey,
Well, yeah, I mean, like,
you want that information.
No, it's
Like
great.
you can store a lot of terabytes in there.
I also feel like potentially,
Also making
given
sure.
what you've said about the upstanding of like very traditional things. Insert fancy word here. Is that it would not have been passed down like potentially it would be gendered. It would have only been passed from woman to woman to woman through the family. Like it wouldn't have crossed that gender line potentially.
It's a very dainty arm.
Maybe it's not.
Yeah,
Maybe it's just one big beefy arm. And the little wingling
This is
things.
grandma's.
I think I've seen this anime.
No, it's Homestar Runner. Different reference, yeah.
Our runner.
No, it looks very like just human average, but it's like gilt and ornate.
Have you seen the new Battle Angel Alita?
I haven't. It really sad.
That's fine. I'm not gonna say anything, but she has arms that are beautiful, like white ivory almost, and they're ornate, and that's what I was thinking of when you were describing it.
Yeah, like some really nice Shara metal or something like that.
Yeah,
I would say it's. I mean, and again,
straight mithril.
You have entire control over it, so
straight mithril.
It's adamantine.
Sorry.
It might as well be made out of dragon cheese at this point, kids. If we're just
vibranium.
It's made.
I was just being a
It's
troll,
made out of
sorry.
dragon cheese. Okay,
We're all
it's made
troll
out of
right now.
dragon cheese. And
all right. Bring it
Canada.
back around. So I like this. I have a question about the information in there, but first, since it was on deck before, is a question because I love this terminology. What a unmodified human is referred to as a flat.
Yes, love it.
Flats are baseline, unmodified
right.
humans born with all the natural defects, hereditary diseases, and other genetic mutations that evolve so lovingly, or that evolution so lovingly.
The grays are definitely not flat.
Yeah, no.
Because
I would say you actually fit in well with what restrictions I'm going to add to morphs to start off with.
But you're more technologically augmented rather than genetically augmented, or a blend of both.
A blend. Like the tech just happens to be the outward sign.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's like wearing a crown, except we haven't. Our family has an arm instead of the Victorian crown jewels.
Okay, can I ask you what
Because you'll
might be a
accept that.
personal question for the character?
Yeah.
Great.
Do they remove the biological arm to put on the mechanical arm?
Like an age of ascension.
Is it like a ritual or something?
I haven't decided that yet.
Because
so fucking
think
cool,
about
though.
I just want to know. That's
third
great.
arm. Can you just have 3 arms?
Right.
No.
Can you just
This is my knowledge arm. It's best.
I want an arm coming out of the center of my chest.
You're like, guys,
Why not?
Right?
No, I mean,
right under your other arm?
like with his family
crazy.
definitely not being flat, they are aesthetically pleasing. So
There's a very
And otherwise, fly.
maybe you're trend leading though. It's all the rage of the future. It's 3
Oh,
arms
it
on the
could.
chest.
Oh, it could be. It could totally be
Talk about
trendy.
another.
You could be trendy on the ship.
What if
we're not trendy.
half of you's
We're
just
just-
like Swiss
No,
Army?
you can't
and
avoid
just
it,
like,
man.
The arm is the
When
arm
the-
is
yeah.
When
Yeah.
the neckbeards see
Regular arm
see
puffs
your sweaters,
I find
they're
that
just
better.
going to
It's
be.
been a rough week. I haven't shaved. It's like it's real neck beard. Yeah, sorry.
No, neckbeards go the other way. Like none up
Yeah,
here.
that's like
and
up
then-
here.
oh,
Yeah.
Oh, hard pass.
Yeah.
No, I've
So
That's why.
I was trying to decide between
Yeah.
whether it is like a coming of age thing where your physical arm is removed, or if it's like a nano.
No, I'm imagining you like the ritual is you high fiving somebody for the last time. Boom, chop.
Chop. Oh my god.
Give me 5.
And again, the closet giggling happening.
Or because we have nanotech, like
The
it's
5
passed
has
down
been
as
given.
a seed and like grows off of.
Terrifying, just the
Our producer
Closet
is
giggles.
cracking up off scene, and it's cracking me
I
up.
hope that all of you are laughing over here as opposed to.
These are all masturbation jokes, by the way.
Of course.
Yeah.
Doves.
Wait, when are we not doing masturbation
Hey, that could be
jokes?
body mod. You don't
I
know.
don't know.
Anyway,
I
continue.
do.
Talk about the seed.
So if it's a seed that like grows down off of the ancestor's arm and then like seeds and grows up, like, and which would entail the removal of that flesh as it grows, but
What about run it out there again? You always said you have the since it is we've somewhat established like mother to daughter and so on down the line, right? Yes,
yes.
I'm I'm just throwing this idea that, and so carry it along as you will or won't. Something along the lines of like when the first like daughter is born, right, or is like in gestation, there is like a process where the arm like fades like into the system of the mother and actually like grows with the fetus in the process. Run it out there. Nanotech.
Oh, so
pieces,
like
right?
as the fetus is growing, the body reabsorbs the arm, and then the other.
Mm-hmm. And then the
Can you
fetus
imagine,
the
like,
kid
giving
is
birth
literally
to
born.
cyborg
That's
parts,
creepy.
though?
That's creepy.
That would fucking
Is
hurt.
this where we draw the line? Yes,
Hang on.
Well, actually,
We're talking
I
about a
was.
C-section, right? Because like,
No. I
He
was
cuts
actually.
himself out. It's
oh
fine.
my god,
No,
Surprise!
I was gonna go.
Baby.
time.
No, I was gonna go farther than that.
Oh, good.
And then the mom dies.
And suggest that
Hates it.
we don't do natural births anymore.
I disagree, but I would say that is mostly non-natural birth. I would say there are factions of people who still go through that experience. But here's the thing, also, because we talked about childbirth is actually relatively rare now. It's in terms of like we sort of like moderated our population.
We don't live very long, but we weren't trying to repopulate the world, though.
I think we last time at least, and this is what I'm holding in my mind is like we sort of like kept it at, hey, 400 million is actually a very manageable number, and so there's a level of like we can expand as a resource, but it's like we all have a choice now because there's no biological drive that says I have to populate now, I'm going to die or anything along those lines, right? So we are being very intentional with the population.
Right.
Not to say that nothing is happening, but it's certainly radically slowed down. There's no pressure to it. You don't have to wait for like your biological prime because that doesn't matter.
We can make bodies and we can make
bodies.
artificial intelligence.
There's a level of brewing humans we can make, and people want to do the natural piece.
I feel
but
like
it's a smaller faction now.
But we have choice.
Yes.
And that ultimately, at least when I sat down and like really took a solid look at when did we try to nuke the place? When did we say no? And then like when did we get our fusion energy? These kinds of things. We're actually looking at a fairly small amount of time, like a few generations, so to speak.
Yeah, it's still new.
So, right. Not only is it new, but we're still living with this. There's twofold in my mind is that you have the memory of like, oh God, we need to get it under control, everybody. And because of like wars raging forever, we didn't just up and fix the planet. The cephalopods didn't just say like, cool, it's like all good now, like lush green earth. So we still have long stretches and tracts of land that are unusable for resources.
Yeah.
Giant tracts of land.
Sure.
Terrible.
So like that's sort of what I think of as far as like, yeah, we can re-sleeve, but we're still looking. That's why the ship is something that we can think about and make so well, because we're already thinking in that way. Like we have this amount of resources. This is what we can use. This is what we need.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that for sure. Cool. So yeah, we'll table that as kind of a flavor, but certainly like we mentioned on the ship anyway, we've already talked about like having kids is somewhat taboo on the ship. Well,
on the ship is different. I was just speaking like in terms of what.
Imagine it's carryover of that.
How far advanced are we? Like that's just what I was thinking. But I guess if we'd been through a cataclysm and humanity was fairly like rudimentary compared to what it is now, they wouldn't eliminate natural birth, but they would try to enhance the genetic propagation of the species.
Yeah. So a piece you guys are cute. It's party time.
Party time!
Shit overseas.
Flip up. Love you all. But pause for a second.
Sorry.
So it's like you're on the whiskey train. I love it. Also don't apologize. Cheers. So
that was really loud.
We did it between likes. It was fine. I'm imagining on Earth, right? And naturally, I'm giving you this image before a giant solar flare wipes them out. But because of what we just discussed, like there is a shocking amount, shockingly low amount of younger aged people on the planet, right? Like it like there has been this like we need to lock everything down, manage our resources. We're finally doing decent budgeting, right? Kind of level on all the pieces, and so we've started doing that now. But I want to say that like there's a pretty big gap. that pretty big gap between sort of like, almost like a 50, 60-year-old generation and like newer kids that are starting to come up. And so they're hard, like I would say not millions of young people on the planet. I'd say there's probably like, and this is shocking and weird, maybe 200 like toddler aged or younger kids on the planet.
But then there's one plucky teenager.
No.
Yeah,
I'm still trying to get Wesley Crusher.
We don't have the resources for those sweaters.
Okay. How old is Penelope?
TBD. We can TBD it.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
But like,
or better question,
which might be 70. I don't know, right?
Better question might be how young do you appear?
I mean,
what is the pinnacle of
visual
physicality? Because here's a piece. If you are a crew member, you are going to be at your peak physicality for this mission, and that was the goal. Right. So, like, with some flexibility, right? You're allowed to do whatever in that case, but like, think about that as a core piece.
Yeah,
mid to late 20s.
Cool.
That is, that's peak of humanity usually, except for athletes who like peak in their teens, which is crazy.
Looking at you, Olympic team.
Yes, especially gymnasts, where they're like, "I'm 17 and I have won 17 gold medals." And like,
right. I would think that I would think that humanity would probably have got a grip on like massive hormonal imbalances and the the inevitable your cells don't regenerate, like
telomeres.
Yeah, you extend life by just training your body not to stop regenerating cells, and you can pretty much have the hormonal structure of a mid-20s person for 75 years, 100 years, 150 years.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like at this point, we don't see an issue with that. Like, really, a level of indefinitely, right? You can kind of I imagine dial in your age as you're like, I want to choose my telomeres to be a certain length. I want to look this way.
Like you can age to a certain point, and then you just don't age anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a never mind. That's part of the book club. I'll get back to that later. The book that I suggested to you recently, Pandora's Star.
I started it. I have not gotten very far. But I started.
It's thick. We'll talk in a second. Thickuka. So.
Thick bitch. I like tempo.
Yeah. All right. So, Connor, is there anything else to tackle that right now? So I want to then go back around the circle and see if anybody's had some time to like let some thoughts percolate about other people, and then we're going to take a break.
I think that's really as far as I got in. Yeah,
cool. Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Name, sort of history. And we actually fleshed out a lot more than I had when I showed up. So
sounds great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like what the idea. That's why like I was literally. It doesn't matter if you have a fully fleshed out idea or just like a name, and then we're gonna roll with it. That's what I love about this group, and we'll play with it. And any of the ideas we've said is not concrete anyway, right? So, except for obviously baby fetus arm is 100%. If you don't do it, I'm doing it.
It's like a baby's arm holding an apple.
Can we not? Actually, I really like that like level of horror of it like cutting itself out of the mouth.
Not this time.
Not your time. Future tech.
Yeah.
It's just like it just happens. Like it's planned, it's timed. Everything's
we've
great.
all read Dune, right?
Yes.
Axolotl tank. Nice. Yeah.
Talking about, like,
I just mean it on that level, like it's so hardcore, and like the way that their rituals go. I imagine that whole baby cutting itself out scenario being like just a serious faced like group ritual thing.
Oh yeah.
Sticking a Chris nice out there. It's gonna get weird.
But I'm really thinking of this Ray as this like British dynasty that's very proper and like.
So you're gonna do a British voice for us then?
Watch it. Us with it.
The closet giggle said do it.
I can't do accents, Bill.
Which is why we want you to do it. It's space. We got a vocal coach.
It's gonna get real bad.
That's exactly what we want.
Well, think about it though. Think about it. What's the English accent going to sound like in several hundred years with this kind of cultural pressure?
I feel like England would still mainly exist based off of who would probably blow each other up.
Yeah.
So British accents being like British people. Anyway, we don't.
Well, you know, we only must grumble in the end.
deal with
Also,
it all
the
later,
British created their particular accent so they wouldn't sound like the Americans anymore.
Oh yeah, no, totally. It was like literally out of pretension.
Yeah.
Sound the way they do.
They're like, oh, you guys are...
That could persist. And that could definitely persist.
Kalur.
Well, I mean, honestly, that happened first.
I'm just kidding.
That happened
I'm
first,
just
and then
being
we...
a dick.
Kalur.
Shoppy.
Clever.
We just lost every single one of our British. That's right. And then there's Australians. We can talk about that later. So, what I want to do, we're going to take a break here shortly. Not yet, but I want to go back around the table one more time and just give everybody an opportunity to see if any questions have percolated for that particular character. No pressure in particular, like, for that. When we come back around, I'm going to task you with a little bit of a creation thought for the break. And then we will step outside, stretch, and enjoy the beautiful dying summer light for Northwest here, since we don't have much
It's
of
an
it.
unseasonably warm fall day.
Yeah, but it has also been an unseasonably cold summer latter part of August, so we'll roll into this. At any rate, so let's come back around to Truth Seeker. Have you thought of anything in particular to add to Truth Seeker, or have things have come up, maybe how you relate to other characters? Or have all of you thought of anything for Truth Seeker? I'm going to open the stage to you first.
Okay. So I just want to throw out there that if Truth Seeker is the one who transmissions back to Earth, that the solar flare is going to happen, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
They would add all of the information that they know in that transmission, including, like, hey, they're cutting communications off, and this is a decision being made to preserve what we possibly can of the human race. This is seen as our best chance, but I don't think it's up to just the government to decide. I think it's up to all of you to decide.
Mm-hmm.
Type deal.
I say the transmission cuts.
And then the transmission cuts, exactly.
Yep. I'm behind that. I
Yeah.
like that a lot.
I also
We're going to role play this come first time around. I just want to be
that's
clear,
totally fair.
but...
I'm just throwing that out there. Like, it wasn't like, hey, everybody, this is happening, and they're lying to you about it. It was like, this is why they're doing it, and, like, it's a moral decision on all of y'all's part what you do about this information, kind of thing.
Unbiased truth, yeah.
Yeah. I think Truth Seeker is also a copy. I think they're that pretentious that they would be like, oh, I don't need to actually leave Earth. Like, I'm still needed here. There's still so much I can do here. And it's, like, also something that's kind of, like, frowned upon in society, but, like, they wouldn't care.
Yeah, you're a duplicate.
I'm a duplicate. So, like, that might even be some bias people have against me on the ship, is that I'm a duplicate. My actual self blew up in the solar flare.
I love you so much right now. That is, I was just thinking about that like a half an hour ago.
Like, my character is that pretentious, I think, that they would be like, I'm needed in both places.
I want you to think about that when we get to the latter part of character creation, like some of the flaws and things that might come about from that, because I want to say that the duplication process was not easy or perfect. Yeah. And so to play around with things like that. But I love that.
Totally.
Cool. Any questions for Truth Seeker? Which is a phrase that I really enjoy saying, actually.
Right. Not yet.
Cool.
But
honest answers promised.
Right. I feel like I would say that for my character, I would just be, man, like, if you are what you've now said that you are, like, I'm so intrigued by you, but I also hate you because I don't actually.
About me.
The thing is that, like,
standard.
The way that I think about it, like, someone in my position constantly reshuffles the pertinent information. Mm-hmm. Like, it's always about, like, well, what do they really need to know? What do we need to know to get done? So, like, you're unabashed, like...
Everybody should have access to all that information.
Right. Yeah. So, like, I both hate it, but, like, you're a copy, and so I super want to study you. Like...
That's a high compliment from a scientist.
Nice.
You want to come back to my place and study?
Would you like to come...
Anytime.
Check out my...
I'd like to run some trials by you.
Right.
Science words. Cool. Moving along to question mark character. 20 questions. I'm just going to tag along for now.
Is everyone, all the characters at the table using the VR?
The mesh?
Yeah, everybody is.
Everybody is.
Access, 100%.
See, so you're interacting. You start to see anomalies, like characters that aren't ship members. But
we already knew there was going to be some, right? But
yeah, but they're saying weird things like end of the world stuff, like I haven't really fleshed out any particular details, but just that after the comms go down and then come back up, there's reports from all over the ship. Everyone is talking about the ghost in the machine.
Named Cassandra, who's talking about the end of the world and nobody believes her.
No, but rather it's the last. It's like the last words of humans, and the word starts to go around among the crew that it starts to like awake a kind of a weird like latent superstition that people are like feeling haunted by. They're not necessarily having like their own family members visit them. It's not that direct, but they're getting weird messages that are of all kinds of aspects, but they're all random, and then the characters say what they want to say, and then they ask a question, and then they disappear. And everyone has that same experience.
Much creepier than like a ghost, you know.
Yeah.
Rando stranger ghosts.
Who's like, blah, 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 important statement. What do you think about this? Bye.
Also, like on the dice roll, it could be a ghost, you know, but it's not talking to you. Like it,
which is also extra fucking creepy.
Well, it is
right. I know. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
First, it says these last words, and then the eyes on the avatar lock gaze with you, and then start to say something and disappear. And this goes on for some time.
Cool. And we'll play that out as it comes through. But I like that as an interesting like flavor to get people thinking about that. Do y'all have any further 20 questions? I mean, honestly, I don't know how to interact with you right now, so.
Neither do I.
Yeah, cheers.
Looks like I'll be chasing a ghost.
Cool. I like it.
Find out.
I
will task when
y'all
ghosts
with
disappear, they go bloop.
No, it's for sound.
Well, what it looks like is like you're looking at. At first, it's a very like discrete like video image, like a 3-dimensional rendering of a 2-dimensional image, like translucent.
So you can tell that,
and
it's
you can see,
flat.
and you can tell that it's of a common transmission method when you're trying to use as little data as possible, but transmit it along long periods, or long distances. But then at once it does its spiel, then it changes nature, and it starts to like where you're kind of looking at like the body and face are all a series of tumblers with different like aspects.
Oh yeah.
And
right.
So you see it cycle, and then it asks you a question, and then all the tumblers kind of like reset to white noise, and then just disappear.
Oh god, what was that story where it wasn't a video screen, but it was a pixel screen that was tumblers to make a moving.
I'm not sure what we're talking about, but I like the imagery. Think about it. We'll get back to it.
I feel like it was Bruce Sterling.
I don't know. Let's get back to it though. I like that.
I've been thinking a lot about Bruce Sterling lately.
Nice.
Everyone
cool. Unless there's any further questions, then I would move on. But I like that as like a way to add more mixed like confusion to the mix in a delightful way. Good confusion. Evie, anything more about Castor, or like how Castor relates to what you've heard, or anybody?
Well, I mean, I said the thing about Truth Seeker.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, as Mark was talking about, whatever this is. So I have two things. One is character related, is that obviously I'm going to see some of that usage, and it's going to be obvious, not obvious to me, that usage is, like you said, lower. Like it's not like somebody directly broadcasting, right? Like it's going to be
Right,
like the lowest amount. It's not like what we would normally use for broadcasting ourselves. It's just going to be different, is I guess the point that
it's
I'm
coming
making.
from you don't know, you're not sure where it's coming from.
Right.
But you know it's related to the massive data storage.
Right. So, like, my main thoughts are just that, like, I made a lot of notes, and I'm like, oh, I'm keeping an eye on this.
Right.
Just really right. WTF.
Alternatively, from a player perspective, this is ripe for cult activity on the ship as we grow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying. Long story short, yes, I'm so into this.
Create a cult.
Also, like, because we talked about before how the ship is so big that you're gonna have
you are.
like almost like tribal sections, you know, and then we already have our factions, which are its own kind of grouping. So I like this a lot because this is like further like sort of like poking that and poking the society aspect, and then also like poking with the fact that because we are fairly young to this kind of thing, we're still carrying all of our like like a history of humanity's superstitions, as well as our magic and our practice, and all of that.
I like that.
Did you have something?
Well, no, just adding to that, like, because we're supposedly post-religion, like, that actually makes our society more
susceptible
to cults, and like so far we've formed several.
Right. Yeah.
Just in character creation.
Right.
I'm sorry, that's in character creation, cult creation.
I can't help if the people want the information I have to give them.
Yes.
Truth cult.
I can't help if you
Hashtag
think I'm a
truth cult.
ghost.
Right.
No, that's terrible. I love it.
Alternatively,
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Alternatively, if anyone has any further questions or insights for me about my character.
We'll pause for silence for a moment, see if anybody has anything.
Cool.
I like where you're going.
I do too. I
Nice.
think you're good. I have a random question.
You're the toolbox.
Yeah.
Love toolboxes.
What?
That'd be our tool.
Wait, real question, Tool. How do you spell your name?
Oh,
Yeah, I
so
was curious about that too.
Yeah, just
with a K.
with the K-A-S-T-E-R.
Yeah.
Kaster. Got it.
Right? That being said, if there is a potential nickname that is spelled not like you would expect it to be. I don't know why that's important for me to tell you all, but yeah, there you go.
Try to work it into the story.
I like that. All right, coming back around then to Penelope. You apologize, Drink.
Oh, all right.
I felt bad about it.
That was awesome.
It was so good.
It was super in character. I enjoyed it.
I'm sorry.
Just call it as I see it.
You know,
Speaking truth.
you're just speaking the truth as you see
You
it.
can't apologize when you say the truth, by the way.
It's funny. Calling someone a tool
we're
is
gonna have
kind
to
of
work on that.
biased, don't you think?
Not when you called yourself one first. I'm just presenting information you presented back.
I didn't call
Caster
myself a
never
tool.
called himself a
actually,
tool.
No, it was me. I called you a tool.
The ghost in the machine. It whispered it to you. You're not
I'm
biased.
My work here is done.
It's like tool. Well, different voices and different faces saying it. Tool.
Ooh, I like this.
Okay. All right, anyway, Penelope, tell us about your hand. I don't know, whatever. Does it have 5 fingers? Is it a regular arm hand?
It's a human standard hand.
Standard.
It's
Apart
just a
from
claw.
stick.
No, definitely like
Focus.
The whiskey.
mostly white ceramic with like silver, which is probably titanium filigree. Like
Nice.
this thing is strong, but not like
No adamantium.
There's no adamantium.
Unobtainium, thank you.
Unobtainium.
it's not like
Wonderful.
superhero level strong, but can definitely like it's robot strong. It can crush a can.
I can crush it.
Or whatever you
Well-
put in the hands.
What kind
Yeah.
of can?
No, it can crush a
paint
can into a
or
diamond.
soda can?
Yeah. So, no, it can like it can crush a number 10 can. Kitchen thing. It's
No.
Yeah, it's the
No, I got it. Yeah.
the
that you get all the peppers and shit in.
yes.
Yeah.
It can crush one of
This is
those
fucked up.
into just a little ball.
Cool.
That's cool.
With the Sweetie Peps still inside of it.
And then chuck it at people.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Improvised weapons.
I would pick pickled Brussels sprouts if it were me.
All right, George Viper.
Pick a peppers.
I don't know. Are there any questions for or about Penelope?
Yes, I have a question.
Oh, what is your job on the ship so far?
Programmer.
What would you say it is that you do here?
Well, like the sect that you're part of.
What is your
Yeah.
function?
Yeah.
Real question. Did you?
I mean, that was a real question. So.
No.
Rude.
No, I mean, I have a real. No, my joke. I made a joke and then I had a real question. That wasn't a hit on Mark's question.
No,
Mark
but
had a
that's
good
really
question.
funny though. I liked it.
I love you, Mark. Can we continue?
Sorry, can I
Yeah,
ask
I
a
will not
legitimate
apologize.
question?
I'm just looking for truth here, guys. Got a question.
Which, by the way, your necklace is kind of like a little magnifying glass, like you're seeking truth. I dig
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
yeah.
felt like canonical in theme and whatnot.
it. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've been playing with it all night.
Big
though.
words.
Please continue with your
I
legitimate
got
question.
words. Oh, guys, you asked me so many questions when I was trying to ask this question that I don't remember what I was gonna fucking say.
Oh, that's what I wanted.
No.
Hang
Everybody
on.
wait in silence.
Whiskey, y'all. Don't stare at me. It makes it worse. It's like how am I gonna
Everybody
get this up now?
awkwardly
Everybody
look away.
Fuck all of you. Okay.
So Penelope does fiber arts.
Oh,
She
right.
She
I remember my
crochets.
question. Sorry.
Nice.
Your character's really awesome, and I just want to know: did you like? What do you like leaving behind on Earth? Did you like? Does your family have like a farm? Do you like? I don't know. Do you like still raise sheep or something? Like, do you make your own like fiber still? Like, do you
Spider
make like,
goats.
Like what? Like what? I don't know. Like I'm just curious. Like what is your full legacy? Like you say that you like pass on these different traditions, but like what is your like family? Like what are you leaving behind? Like were you like a I don't know like an heiress? Like you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
no, like leaving behind an estate, leaving behind a cottage on that estate, like her entire family. Like Penelope is the one.
And is your family large in consciousness number?
Good question. That's a really interesting way to ask it. I like it.
Yeah.
Consciousnesses, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Is your elitist family
Like I just wanted to like step away from like, is your family large? And then like, since we're working with potential consciousness, maybe you have the money to bank them. They don't ever die as far as like, you know, consciousness goes.
I feel like there's a sizable bank, but most of that is only accessed to cross-reference information that's stored in the ARM for historical purposes. Like they're once they've reached the end of their physical life, like they're really not going to be re-sleeved, but we might store them for another like.
They're not stored in the.
No, definitely not.
Are they on?
You can like talk to
So
your
are they?
ancestors.
So they're like VR. Like you can
For like maybe another like
Hey, Ma.
like you can visit
50,
them.
100 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also like,
But like physically not like an average size like multi-gen clan. So maybe like 15 people.
I like that.
I also feel like if you are going with this sort of very traditional archetype, much like potentially the birthing process, the death would be important too. Like,
Yeah.
it would be like, we're traditional. You do have. Stop. Could we just focus?
What is bored was done?
But I also never said that they were doing
Into the-
traditional
into the-
births.
caught.
But
No, you're right. You're right. You didn't.
But
But I'm
so-
just saying you were talking about in general how they were traditional.
yeah, like
And I just sort of was wondering if maybe the death process was part of that too. Like, you know what? We have reverence for life. We have reverence for these old ways of doing things.
Yeah.
And so I see like sort of the potential to make like a big ceremony out of like, this is the death of your meat sack.
Yeah, and in that sort of family dynamic anyway, like births and deaths are going to be pretty large events. So like
What if you have, and this is like sort of a display, a little bit of like the wealth that you have, even though we don't have much of a hierarchy, we haven't talked about this too much. I want to play around with how money and those things even potentially still exist. But we've talked about how a lot of things are recycled and used, both on the ship, but also I imagine on the planet we got to this level of like even dead bodies. But like I'm wondering if your family has enough influence, enough wealth to still like do a burial process, like a mausoleum kind of element, where whether ashes or bodies themselves are still stored, and like that's a place where you can go visit the virtual
consciousness
a
mausoleum.
consciousness mausoleum, something that is like a updated, hearkening to the old ages. But it's up to you. But
And it wouldn't be it wouldn't be a mausoleum. It would be more like a cinema,
digital cinema.
Also, going back to another book that I read where there was actually a room where you went to go visit your ancestors who were all former emperors. They're like, if they have an estate, there would be a folly on the estate for like,
because land is still, I mean, pretty rare. Like we said, there's empty tracts and whatnot. So that's where like the one thing that your wealth is still showing is like maintaining is just having physical.
Yeah, there's land. There's a manor house. There is a cottage.
Which is
there is a folly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Because wool is one of the best fibers. I never said it was British.
I'm pretty sure that's canonical.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure British.
I thought you were unbiased.
Yeah, we talked about the accent. It's happened.
I mean, I'm just stating truths.
Okay, so now Penelope is British.
I've been told they were
whether
British.
you're actually British or not, you have
You're
a
making
British
them up
accent.
and stating them.
Stuck.
Yeah. It's a Trump world over there.
Nope. Don't say that word. No.
Can we at least make her Welsh?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Let's go.
I like that better anyways.
Welsh accent's a lot harder.
So you're better at a Welsh accent than a British
right?
accent. That's awesome.
Honestly, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So no offense to all of our Welsh listeners.
I feel like you would.
I've watched.
No offense, Welsh people.
Yeah, but
I
also
know,
like,
but I couldn't pretend to know it. I don't know.
I've watched a few episodes of Torchwood.
I would not necessarily call those canon Welsh accents.
No, I wouldn't either. But
Anyway,
no, just like I would say Welsh because of my own family history. Like,
That's cool.
I'm done with that.
Nice.
Draw from your strengths.
Yep.
So, if
there's also
there
a
is
lot of
any
shit
more
there.
questions, that's carried on after the break. I want to take a, let's say, 10 to 15 minute break to kind of like bring ourselves together, stretch, etc. Use the bathroom.
Drink
Those
some
of us who
water.
are out and about. So, your homework for the next 15 minutes or so is something I gave you a long time ago, but the viewers don't know that until now. So, I want you to think about an NPC as well as a location in the virtual that we're going to talk about, something that we'll kind of like add in, and plenty more will happen post this. But otherwise, we're going to kind of dip into the character creation process for the remainder of the show tonight. We'll probably do like a somewhat abbreviated version of that because otherwise people just stare at us writing things down on our character sheet and adding numbers up. But we'll walk through it and then probably cut off at that point. So let's take a quick break and get back to it. All right.